Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of STEM Girls Virtual. My name is Emily, and I'm here on behalf of the Cincinnati Museum Center. On this show, we talk about different careers in the STEM fields, those fields being science, technology, engineering, and math. Today is an extra special STEM Girls because we're speaking with IFTHEN Ambassador, Dr. Lekelia Jenkins, Associate Professor at Arizona State University. Kiki, thank you for joining us today.
I'm glad to come and talk to you all.
Yes, we're excited to have you. So first off, you are a marine sustainability scientist. Can you explain what marine sustainability is?
Yes, so marine sustainability is focused on the ocean environment. Any saltwater environment is a marine system. And sustainability is the idea that humans are part of the ecosystem. We both want to protect it, protect the animals, the plants, the habitats, but we also want to be able to use it in a sustainable fashion. We want to be able to use it again and again in the future for multiple generations so that both the animals, the habitat, and people can survive.
Okay, and what kind of research are you conducting? Because you're also a researcher.
Yes. So most of my work focuses on the human dimension. So how people are interacting with the oceans. I'll work a lot with fisheries and help them to be more sustainable so that they're only catching what they need. I've worked with marine renewable energy, so alternative energies to fossil fuels like tidal energy. And right now I'm working on a program that is looking at how to reduce waste and how we catch our seafood. So not just waste in terms of fish, but waste in terms of fuel and water.
Oh, wow. That is so neat. So as far as being a scientist, you also are a big proponent of the arts. You're a dancer.
Yes.
So a lot of times when people hear scientist and dancer, they think those don't go together. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on how they do go together. How do they contribute to the work that you do as a scientist?
Yeah. So I am a dancer and a choreographer, and I've often thought about what my research would look like as a dance. As scientists, we talk about research like we're doing right now, we write about it, but I could see a performance around it. And what I found is that when I do these dances, people are interested to watch them. They begin to start trying to understand the meanings in it, but they're also really excited when they get to participate in them. So I will do dances where the public can come and dance with me and we create a dance together. They learn more about the science that way because they're actually playing a role of a sea turtle caught in a net, for example. And so they'll remember the science for a very long time, and they often will create a emotional connection to it, so it has meaning for them. And it hopefully will lead to them taking some action to change how they're engaging with the environment.
That's really neat. That's a really neat way for kids to learn science, to be a dancing sea turtle. I love that.
Kids and adults.
Yeah.
I actually do a lot of it with adults because adults don't get permission to move their body as you get older. And I think it's something that girls nowadays can hold on to. I talk to girls who are musicians or write poetry, and they feel like they have to choose. They have to be an artist or they have to be a scientist, and that's just not true. You can meld those things together in really powerful ways. And I just want to encourage them to know that they can claim ownership of both their scientific self and their artistic self, both now in their youth, but when they get older too.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so you've been a dancer for quite some time. Have you always been interested in STEM?
Yes. Since my first science fair project in 4th grade, I didn't even really understand what it was. I just understood that I got to ask and answer my own question. And to me, that was fascinating. My first science fair project was terrible. It was like the lemon and the copper wire deal, and it didn't work, and I don't think I had any electricity, but that opened the door, and year after year, I would just spend most of the year thinking about what am I gonna do for my science fair project, and it was totally voluntary. It wasn't a requirement. It was just something that I did, and my parents saw that science spark in me, and I started doing science camps, and then it grew from there.
Okay, that's really neat. It brings me back to my elementary school science fair projects. What about marine sustainability in particular made you want to become a marine sustainability scientist?
That was interesting because I see it now as the fact that my family, we're all fishermen. As soon as you can walk, you have a fishing rod. And my favorite thing to do as a kid during the summers was to go crabbing on the Chesapeake Bay and catch blue crabs. So I had that in my upbringing, but I had in my mind that I was going to do large mammal terrestrial research, like Jane Goodall or something like that. And I went to graduate school still thinking I wanted to do terrestrial conservation, but I also wanted to combine natural science and social science. And the one place I could find that was willing to do that at the time happened to be a marine lab, where they did some terrestrial work. But once I was there, I fell in love with the ocean. I fell in love with the problems that the oceans are facing and realizing I could do really good work there. And then it just clicked for me. I'm like, I'm a girl who grew up on the Chesapeake Bay. Like, what am I thinking? I should be doing ocean work. And so that's what led to me focusing on marine sustainability.
Oh, that's really neat. I love Maryland crab. So.
Yay. If you haven't tried it, try it.
Delicious. So I introduced you as an IFTHEN Ambassador. Can you tell us what that is?
Yes. So AAAS IFTHEN Ambassadors is a new program. It's a combination of the American Association for the Advancement of Science and Lyda Hill Philanthropies. And their idea was to find women in the STEM fields. They may be scientists or they may be fashion designers who create fashion around science themes. Anything having to do with science, technology, engineering, and math and medicine. And to highlight these women as role models, because girls nowadays don't see women in all these roles to know that it's possible for them to have that career. And their motto is, if she can see it, she can be it. So that if girls see these representations of women in all these different STEM fields, then perhaps they'll decide to choose that as a career.
I love that. And what's a favorite thing about being an IFTHEN Ambassador that you can share?
Well, I think it was one, we had a launch meeting where all 125 IFTHEN ambassadors were in the same room together. And that was really inspiring to see and see the diversity represented in that room. And then there's just wonderful opportunities like this one that I would not normally have. Or we did science days at the AAAS meeting, and it was great. I got to bring my turtle costume and engage with families and their kids and talk about ways that technologies can protect sea turtles. So it's those types of opportunities that make it really worthwhile.
It's wonderful. Yes, it's a really great program. And I'm very excited that you had us get to interview you. So you're our first IFTHEN Ambassador. So very exciting. Can you tell us about a favorite memory you have of being a scientist or a really exciting day you had?
So, yes. I'll tell you a couple, just two quick stories. So for me, when I'm in the midst of doing a project, I'll be in the field and I will be traveling and talking to people. And often I'm meeting them for the first time. And one of the interviews that I remember very well is with a guy named Gary Graham. He's with Texas Sea Grant. And his job is to talk to fishermen about ways to be more sustainable, problems they may be having, and solutions that scientists may have for them. And he is at heart a teacher. But he teaches adults, basically. And so I'm sitting down to interview him at a seafood restaurant, and he just starts teaching the waitress. So he teaches the waitress how to tell if a shrimp on the plate is a brown shrimp. There are different species of shrimp that we eat. Once it's cooked, it's hard to tell what it is. He wanted her to know this because he's like, this is a wild-caught shrimp caught in the US, and you can tell by this aspect of the anatomy. And so he taught her and he taught me. And then he quizzed her multiple times to say, okay, do you remember it? And I remember being impressed by like, this is how change happens. Yeah, I was here to talk to him about how he makes change. I was seeing it in my very eyes. And then as we are done with dinner and I'm done with my interview, he says, you know, I want to show you something. And I said, oh, okay. He said, so come with me. And now this is a man I just met, and it's at nighttime in Texas. I've never been to Texas before. And he's like, well, I'll just drive you. Like, I have been told not to get in the car with people I don't know, and no one knows where I am. So he starts driving me, and he drives me out of town, out of the city. We've been in the car for 15 minutes. He drives 15 minutes more. There are no lights now. All the lights are gone. He drives 15 minutes more. I don't know where we are. He stops at a deserted beach. There's no one there. At this point, I'm thinking, what's going on? And he walks, and then he gets really excited. He goes, oh, what is that? What is that? And he thinks at first it might be a nesting sea turtle, but then he gets closer and it's a giant mylar frog balloon. I mean, like huge, like my arms can't get around it on the screen. And he said, this is why I wanted to bring you here. So that you could see this trash that's on the beach that the turtles are eating and they're getting entangled in. And this is what I do. I'm a researcher. I see this. But it was so meaningful to him that he drove me 45 minutes one way, so it's an hour and a half round trip, to show me garbage on the beach to drive the message home. So that was a really inspirational moment in my life and in my research for me to go, this is why I study this, to find people who are taking these types of approaches and saying, how can we leverage this so that everyone can teach in a really impactful way? And that's part of what I do in my research, is finding these best practices. So moments like that are super exciting, even though they're kind of scary at the same time, because I didn't know what was happening to me.
Right. And that's so poignant too, to drive that far to show something that's having such a big impact on marine wildlife. So yeah, that would be very memorable. Very memorable. Can you tell us about some of the challenges you faced in your role as a researcher and professor?
Yes. So quite frankly, one of the most difficult challenges is the fact that I'm a woman and a Black woman in the sciences, and particularly in the marine science, where there's not a lot of people of color. And there's a reason why AAAS and Lyda Hill Foundation felt like they needed a program like the IFTHEN Ambassadors. And it's because there are not equal amounts of women in the sciences. It's not because that women aren't interested or girls aren't interested, but they're trying to enter through a system that isn't as friendly towards women and girls as it should be. So that has been the largest obstacle. Often I have been the only person in my department or in a room or in a conference that looks like me. And oftentimes people have assumptions about my intelligence or my abilities because I'm a woman or I'm Black, or oddly enough, I'm a dancer, and they somehow think that means I'm not a good scientist. So I've had to deal with those things. And the old adage is true that sometimes you have to work twice as hard to be seen as being as competent as someone else, and that's just not fair. But that's part of the reality of what I'm battling, but I'm battling it so that this next generation of girls has a system that is more just and fair and equitable, so that they can just do brilliant science and be appreciated for it and supported doing it.
Thank you. Thank you for telling us that, and thank you for the work that you're doing. Yeah. On a lighter note, what is the best thing about being a marine sustainability scientist?
Best thing? I would say the people. The people that I meet, all of them are passionate about what they do. They're passionate about the marine environment from whatever angle. They may be from a conservation organization or in government, they may be fishermen. They care really deeply. And so it's a sphere where I can influence change because everyone buys in. No one's checked out about it. They may have different points of view, but they want to see the same thing. And so that keeps it encouraging, even when it's difficult, even when you have animals that are going extinct or ocean acidification or sea level rise, to know that you have this community of people who want to see things get better.
Okay, yeah. And another question I have is, what recommendations do you have for our viewers who might be interested in learning more about marine sustainability?
So I think one of the best resources, particularly for girls, is their local aquarium. A lot of times, maybe not during COVID times, but other times, there will be programming for families and children at all age ranges through aquariums. Some zoos also might have marine exhibits or marine animals that could have activities structured around that as well. And if you happen to be in a place that doesn't have either of those things, honestly, the internet is full of great information. When I was a kid, I spent a lot of time reading biographies of wildlife veterinarians, and I found them fascinating. So even beyond the internet, if you're in a place, and rural places sometimes don't have the quickest internet, your local library. And if you're interested in learning more about science dance in addition to marine sustainability, you can check out my website, which is kikijenkins.com, kikijenkins.com.
Wonderful. And in Cincinnati, we're very lucky to have an aquarium, a zoo, and libraries all over the city. So awesome. We're lucky. Yeah. And my last question for you, Kiki, is what advice would you give to young women and girls who are interested in STEM?
So I think it depends on what stage you're at. If you are in elementary school, or if you're the parent of a girl who's in elementary school, I think focusing on just all of the science enrichment activities that are available. Typically, those are going to be things that organizations are doing for families. And so just bringing them, exposing them to that. But there's a lot that's happening online right now. Once you start getting into middle school, there'll be more programs that are focused on the students that are less family oriented. And so those might be weekend enrichment or even summer enrichment type of activities. Typically, they tend to be general science. Sometimes you'll find something that's just focused on marine issues. Doing those is good because that is, again, continuing exposure and education, but it's beginning to build a track record of interest in science. And that's going to help when you get to the high school and the college stage, when they're starting to engage in more kind of competitive programs to get into. High school is when you start having an option for internships. And so those are application-based typically, and when you can show, hey, I've had a long history of engaging with science. I've been doing these intensive programs. It shows a level of responsibility that if you're doing weekend enrichment where they're running experiments, you can be trusted to do the experiment properly and safely. And so you're more likely to get those internships in high school. And that is going to be key part of getting scholarships in college. And that leads on to grad school. So those are the things I would say if you're in elementary school, doing those family activities together, reading whatever you can, and then in middle school, starting to do the enrichment activities, searching them out.
Thank you. Thank you for breaking it down by age. That's great. Well, thank you for joining us today, Kiki. It's been wonderful having you. And for everyone else, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.